Greetings, my name is Dr. Justin Vance. I wanted to share with you another really interesting story about United States, Philippine Islands, territory, coinage, and currency. Check out my other related videos on the U.S. Philippines money. But today I wanted to talk about a couple of MULE errors that came about during the years of the United States territorial rule in the Philippines. As you know, Philippines was a U.S. territory from 1898 to 1946. The United States defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War in 1898 and received Philippines as part of the spoils of that war. It then fought a longer and more costlier war in the form of the Philippine-American War from 1898 until 1902. The Philippines was hoping to get its independence after the Spain had been defeated. However, the United States wasn't ready to give them their independence yet, and that war was fought. And actually, although it ended in 1902 with the capture of Aguinaldo, the leader of the Philippine independence movement and their president, fighting would continue till about 1913. But in 1903, the coins started being issued, and coins would be issued. U.S. coins would be issued in the Philippines until 1945. They made the last coin in 1945, and U.S. rule would end in 1946. So 1903 to 1945. Now, when the Philippines was taken over by the United States, they didn't switch into the dollar. They had been under Spanish rule for 300 years, so they went ahead and continued with the denomination of the peso and the centavos. And these are some of the 1903 coins. The 1903 issue coins are 90% silver. The peso, the half peso, the 20 centavo, the 10 centavo, all silver. 90%. You see this one has been chop marked, being such heavy duty silver. It was good other places in the world as well, and you see some chop marks probably from trade in China on that particular peso. And here's a 50 cent, a 20 cent, a 10 cent. By the way, the front's the same on all of them, as you saw. Then the nickel, the penny, and the half penny. The 5 cent and the pennies are not silver, as is standard among currencies at the time. And the half centavo would only be issued in 1903 and 1904, and then be discontinued. Of course, the half cent in the United States had been discontinued before 1850, and so not surprising there. Anyway, the design of the coins were the same from 1903 to 1906. By the way, 1906s are the hardest to find. They're going to switch to a smaller, less silver content coin in 1907, starting with the year 1907, because the increase in value of silver was so great. Also, there was a little bit of a problem because actually these Philippine pesos had more silver in them than the Morgan dollar, just a tad bit more silver, and they're supposed to be worth 2 pesos to $1 was the ratio, and so that wasn't working out too well. And so a couple of reasons to downsize the silver. 1906s are hard to find, I was saying, because they didn't let them all go out of the mint, and in fact they called some back in and tried to melt them down, and so not that many made it out. About 200,000 were struck, but far fewer than that on the market today, and it's the hardest year to find. And in fact, of the smaller coins, they only made about 500 for collector purposes of each denomination. So even harder. So not a lot of 1906s, but you'll see 1903 to 1905, maybe a bit fewer 1905s, but you'll see those. And then you see 1907. So look at these side by side. They drop the size of the coin, and they also drop the silver content from 90% to 80%. So still a large coin. You would still recognize it as a silver dollar size, but it's a little bit smaller, and it is a lesser silver content at 80%. They also drop the smaller coins. See this 50 centavos here. They each got smaller, and they dropped them from 90% to 75%. So everything less than the peso went down to 75%. Okay, so the reason I mention this is because also the 20 centavo dropped in size. You see there, it's about the size of a quarter, and then the 20 centavo drops down smaller, say smaller than a quarter. And in fact, if you take a look here, you see the 10 cent dropped in size there, but the 20 cents is the one I want to talk about because it dropped in size to become about the exact same size as the 5 centavo. It is less than less than a half a millimeter difference between the two. The new 20 centavo ended up at 20.86 millimeters, and the nickel then stayed the same size because they didn't need to reduce the content. It stayed at 21.3 millimeters. So again, less than half a millimeter difference. You can't tell from the naked eye. These ones I have here to show you, I put in the same size holder, fit just fine. So they're really, for all intents and purposes, the same size. Also, the backs are very similar. So the front's different. Let me show you the front. The front is the standard design that's on all the silver coins. Sort of a lady there with an anvil and hammer, the volcano in the background. And on the 5 centavo, it's a boy sitting with an anvil and hammer, looking off into the distance there. So the front's very different, but as you can see, the reverse is super similar. This is the 20 centavo. You see the shield. This shield's a little bit wider, and the date's a little bit smaller. If you look at the 5 centavo, the shield's a little bit narrower, and the date's a little bit bigger. Hard to see if you're not looking at them side by side, in fact. There are 13 stars and 13 stripes on the shield on both, but this shield is a little bit narrower, and like I said, the date's a little bit bigger. The date is probably the bigger indicator to me with the naked eye, because it's just really hard to see the shield, especially if you're only looking at one coin or the other. So the coins are minted in Philadelphia and more in San Francisco. And as we move to the San Francisco Mint in 1918, you see a 20 centavo being minted here. This is a pretty nice little example. 1918, see the S to the left of the date. And they're also minting the nickel, San Francisco Mint, 1918. Right, the front's clearly different, the back's just a little bit different, and they're both the same size in diameter, down to less than a half millimeter like we talked about. So there's an error. At some point, while they're making 2.8 million of the nickels, the 5 cent pieces, somebody accidentally puts in the 20 cent reverse, the back of the coin, the reverse. They put in the wrong one, and we end up with this 5 cent coin. This one's not in real good shape, pretty poor condition. Looks like environmental damage. But you can see it clearly has that 20 centavo rears. It's got the wider shield. If you look at them side by side, so here's one that's not an error. And here's one that is, got the wider shield, and of course the smaller date. Look at the size of that date, and look at the size of this date. But yet, they are both 5 cent pieces. So, this is the MULE error. The coin is the Allen 4.08. the regular 5 cent, and then with the error, it's called the B. So this is an Allen 4.08B. Hard to find. How many were made? Nobody knows for sure. And nobody noticed until 1922 that these were out there. So these were all struck for general circulation, all these mules. So I think that there's only one graded at MS65. The rest are less, and most of them are much less. Me trying to estimate how many there are. Well, I looked at how many had been graded by the big graders. There's been 30 graded by NGC, 30 by NGC, 53 by PCGS, and 10 by Annex. So those are the straight grades. Now, Annex is the only one that publicly reports their details grade, and they have 16. So if you go with that 10 to 16 ratio and extrapolate it to NGC and PCGS, that means there would be 48 more NGCs and 85 more PCGSs. So there are 53 that are graded, straight grades, and then so there would be 85 more details, which would add up to 242 of these that are graded anywhere. Now, most people that realize they have one of these do get them graded. This one hasn't, but I would say it might be in the future. And I would also say that it might be a pretty safe guess that half of all those that have that are out there have been graded. So that would mean there are less than 500 of these in existence out of the 2.8 million made. Now, 2.8 million is not a whole lot for U.S. coins overall, but 2.8 million is a pretty big number for U.S. Philippine coins. There's some years with more, 5 or 10 million, but a lot of them have, a lot of years had less than 2.8 million in a lot of the denominations, and some only in the hundreds of thousands. So 2.8 million is quite a lot, and 500 is not very many. And so that's the first mule mix up with these two coins, and there will be another one in 1928. Instead of the 5 cent becoming the mule, this time it is the 20 cent, the 20 centavo. So in 1928, they've been making the. I need to talk about the U.S. Mint branch is established in Manila in 1920. So from the beginning, from 1903, right, the plan was to move the mintage of coins to Manila when possible. And in 1920, they did. They opened a U.S. branch mint in Manila. The mint mark will be M. You can see it on this coin when we look at the reverse. So they they started producing coins there. They made 1 cent and 5 cents most years. They didn't make 20 centavos every year. And in 1928, they got a rush order from the banks. They realized for the money supply, they needed some more 20 centavos. And they hadn't planned ahead. And the Manila Mint didn't have the reverse die for the 20 centavo on hand. All the dies would come from the main mint in Philadelphia. And they didn't have it on hand. And so, but they did have some 5 cent reverse dies. And they decided to use it. And so this one, not on accident, was on purpose. They made 100,000 20 centavo mule coins in 1928. And in fact, all the 1928s are mules. So you don't have to try and figure out which ones are mules and which ones aren't. And as you can see there, it's got the narrower shield. It's got the smaller date. Zoom in. And it's got the M mint mark to the left of the 1928. My light's not cooperating very well here, but I'll get you a good view. There's the M. They did make regular 5 centavos as well. So you see one here with the 5 centavo reverse that it's supposed to have, and the mint mark, and of course the regular 5-cent front of the coin, or obverse as it's known. And yeah, so pretty tough side by side. If you're looking at both in a collection that are the same and you're just looking at the reverses, they're identical. Well, one's silver, right? One's 75% silver and one is nickel copper. So, but visually you can't really tell, you know, they both appear silver colored to the naked eye, and I can't tell by looking at them anyway, but other ways to tell, of course. And of course you can just flip over and see the front. So that's the 1928. So that happened twice. Here's a 1929. This is what the 1928 should have looked like had they had the proper dies. Right, the same obverse, and then the reverse should have been like this, except with the 1928, the smaller 1928, and would have the M mint mark for Manila there. So that's just one to show you what that would look like. So that's happened twice now. Plus, it's probably not fun if you're paying at the store. And easy to get those two coins mixed up, the 20 centavo and the 5 centavo. One thing that is interesting about the 5 centavo mules I didn't mention is that of the few I've seen, people will try to engrave a reed edge around it by hand, it appears. So I think, I don't know, I have two theories, or maybe both. One, people were trying to purposely pass these as 20-cent coins instead of 5-cent coins. Can't really tell in these holders, but all the 20 cents have a reeded edge. That's another 5-cent, of course. Here's the 1918. There, you can see it. All the 20 centavos had a reeded edge, and if you have any of these coins, you know that. And the 5 centavos have a smooth edge. Well, either people tried to give these a reeded edge because they were trying to pass them off with 20 centavos contemporarily, right? Or they were people later on, people mistakenly thought for it to be a mule, it needed to have a reeded edge, which it doesn't. They used the 20 centavo die, but that die does not have the reeded edge on it. That's a different part of the process. And so all the 1918 mules have the smooth edge. So just a side note. All right, so we had made 1928, 1929. All right, so what did they do about it? So we have two mules that have occurred here, two mule errors on two different years between in 1918 and 1928. So in 1930, they downsize the 5-cent piece. They downsize it to 19 millimeters, which is the same size as a current U.S. penny. And if you look at side by side, here's the regular 1918 5-cent, and you see it's bigger. Then they downsized it so people would stop getting mixed up. That happened in 1930. Again, production is still to Manila Mint. So this example here, just to show you, is a 1932 M 5-cent piece, and now it's smaller. They went from a 21 or so millimeters down to 19 millimeters. So it's clearly a different size now, feels different in your hand. It's smaller, probably a good move. The pennies are still the same size as in 1903. So no issue there. You don't get them mixed up with the 5 cents, which are the size of a U.S. penny today, because the Philippine pennies were still sort of a large size penny. And the Manila Mint will continue making coins until 1941, when Japan takes over the Philippines. The mint is captured, all the Philippines is captured, and then the mint is rendered useless, not completely destroyed, but is severely damaged in the Battle of Manila in 1945 as the Americans and Filipinos take back the Philippines from the Japanese. So no more coins would be minted. So 1920 to 1941, U.S. Philippines coins are minted in Manila, and that will be the end. But in 1944, the Americans start back in the United States. This one's from the San Francisco Mint in 1944, 50 centavo. These are still silver, by the way. There's a 20 centavo. They're still making the smaller 5 centavo. So they continued on. By the way, this reverse, so all the coins had the same reverse as you've seen early on. And in 1935, the reverse changes on all the coins to commemorate the Commonwealth, or to recognize the Commonwealth of the Philippines, which was a step in closer to independence that happened in 1935. So the rear of that says United States of America across the top. If you zoom in, it says Commonwealth of the Philippines on that ribbon there. And it's pretty hard to read. You pretty much have to have mint state coins to read it. And even then, even when they're mint, sometimes you can't quite read it. So it's pretty small. And then, yeah, here's the penny here. So the United States continues to mint these in 1944, 1945. This is the Denver Mint, the Philadelphia Mint. So all three mints, main mints, in on the action there. And the Philippines continue to use these coins. We make a lot in 44 and 45, and they continue to use those in 46 in the first several years of the Philippines as an independent country, until they start making their own coins a little bit later on. Well, thanks for joining for another cool story. I will leave you with a view of our two stars of today's story, the 1918 S 5 centavo mule and the 1928 M 20 centavo mule. Oops. One more view.